Good evening and welcome to the Gettysburg Area School District School Board meeting. We have some young faces in the crowd. I know you're here for your principal's presentation, so before he would stand up and we get to that part, please understand we will not be offended. You are excused after that presentation. You do not have to sit here through the entire meeting. Does that sound good? Yes. All right. I didn't think I would get any arguments. Having said that, the purpose of this meeting is to conduct the business of the Gettysburg Area School District. Board of Directors meetings and committee meetings are open to the public but are not public meetings. All school district residents who wish to make public comment should sign in prior to the start of the meeting and request to speak during citizens' participation. Public comment is welcome and all issues will be referred to the appropriate board committee or administrator. Comments will be summarized in the official board minutes, which will be made available by contacting the business office. Please take a moment and silence your electronic devices, and for the kids, that's Xboxes are included. Roll call. Everyone's present with the exception of Mike and Tim. Both of them are excused this evening. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I think, Jason, we are going to skip right through on our communications, and I'm going to ask Dr. McFarland to step forward, and you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hassinger, for that opening. We do have PSSAs tomorrow, so yes, please go home, get some rest, come back ready for tomorrow. Appreciate your time this evening for me and some of my closest friends to present all the great things our students and staff and families are doing at Lincoln Elementary. We focused our presentation this evening on providing you guys a visual representation on most of the cool things that we're doing and everything we could fit into this time frame. Just a brief overview. Our total enrollment's approximately 412 students. We have a Head Start program as well as an LIU classroom, approximately 70 staff members with our custodians and maintenance and things like that included. Unique to me is, besides that first grade class, and this has been pretty consistent throughout the years, is our class sizes are relatively similar with the transiency and everything like that. They're all within 4 or 5 of each other, so that's been very interesting to me over the couple years. Again, we wanted to start with something very important to us, which is parent and community involvement. We focus on that a lot, especially being in the borough. One big item that we have here is our Art at the Market, which we partner with the Farmers Market here in Gettysburg that used to be down by the railroad tracks. This year it moved to the rec park. This is an event in October, and our art teachers prided herself every year on making sure that every student has an art piece shown at this, which is a daunting task. Another great event that's coming up here, you guys are all welcome to this. We'll have the date at the end, is a field day event. This is really cool because it allows our students about an hour and a half across the street at the track to showcase their skills and games that they've practiced all years in gym. We do have parent volunteers who run this, and then all parents are welcome to come and actually enjoy the games with their children too, so that's really, really cool as well. Our Fire Prevention Day, we partner with the Gettysburg Fire Department. They come in, they do an informative lesson in the month of October, and then show the kids their gear and everything like that. It's a really, really cool event that kind of showcases an event they have later on in the month at the firehouse as well. Again, our fine arts, our chorus, here's 4 of our Songfest members and our orchestra. I know that COVID is behind us, but it still warms my heart. This is our cafeteria here, packed full of families seeing our 2nd and 3rd grade students perform a wonderful event. It was nice having that over at the middle school, but it's nice to be home as parents are able to come in, see students' arts, and watch them perform as well. We also partner with Liebell's Mercantile. This is actually one of my favorite slides. We decorated drink coasters, kind of a knockoff of what Starbucks does with your name and a heart and a smiley face on there. And as you see this young man here, nothing better to warm your heart than to get a cup of coffee after a long day's work that says you are awesome, or that says you can do anything you want as long as it's okay. So, I mean, really, really cool. We did that for our entire school. Our PTO also sponsors 3 skate nights over at Magic Elm. This is a wonderful event that's attended by students, parents, and even our staff who enjoy the skating around as well. Just something different to get together outside of school and enjoy some different activities altogether. This is another event that's coming up here in the beginning of May. This is pictures from last year, of course, our Chalk the Walk. What's really, really cool about this is a very low budget item. All we'd have to do is purchase chalk, and it's exactly what it is. Please come. Spend time together. We have teachers who paint faces. We have numerous community organizations who come, such as you see here, the ambulance company, and people just draw wonderful things on the sidewalk, positive messages there that stay, well, until it rains next. But, you know, various food trucks, wonderful event, have a wonderful turnout, and looking forward to that here in the coming weeks as well. This is something that we just finished as well. Our PTO sponsored Penny Wars, and this was a really, really cool contest amongst our school. As you see, our grade levels are here. Grade levels competed against each other, and they got positive points for every coin that was in. And then there was a sabotage, where you could sabotage another grade level by putting paper money into theirs. We raised $1,400. Some of that money is going to support our teacher appreciation. And then our 5th graders decided to donate most of it to our Adams County Rescue for Animals. Again, parent and community involvement, because we have a lot of our parents. It's field trip season right here, and our list of field trips that's sponsored here by our PTO, our kindergartners going to Hollow Balls, Indio-Acker Caverns, our science centers, both in 2nd and 3rd grade, state capitol, and I'll be talking a little bit later about our first trip to BizTown here for our 5th grade students. This is a wonderful event that's coming up here. These are obviously pictures from last year. Our career day for our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students. We had 20 parent and community presenters, anywhere from garbage removal, payroll manager, nurse, firefighter, gamers, cooks, chefs, everything underneath the sun. And our students spent about 2 hours picking who they want to go see and learn more about what it's like and experience those things. One of our partnerships for early learning is our First 10 community partnership, and what this does is it helps our elementary schools partner with childhood programs, community organizations, and health and social service agencies. The focus is on providing support to our students in the first 10 years of their life, which is a very, very important time. They sponsored and led our kindergarten social event, which was outside of school for our incoming kindergartners to get together and make those types of connections. This is another one of my favorite slides in here, too. We've partnered with Gettysburg Pediatrics to hang artwork in their waiting rooms and hallways. We developed and released information for early education providers. Our GASD reading coaches have collaborated and are currently collaborating with our preschool and Head Start programs to get that curriculum and work with those providers so they can provide support to students and the curriculum and framework and ideas of teaching students how to read and get them into those routines before they even come to us. They also participated in Read Across America, and you're seeing here our kindergarten welcome bags that were given out at kindergarten orientation, which were provided by donations from our other community members as well. We also just had Week of the Young Child over here at James Gettys, which is a wonderful event. Numerous staff members, community members were over there, and the purpose of this was focusing on early children and their development as they move into school ready. And some of our students, I see some familiar faces here actually. Some of our students that are already in school as well, again, supporting them. Again, wonderful event, free books given out. Moving into our programs and initiatives, as I mentioned about BizTown, we just sent our 5th grade teachers, students, family members, and volunteers to BizTown over in York, which was a wonderful opportunity. Basically, they worked on financial literacy and career readiness. They really had to run their own town. It was amazing to see and listen to these kids talk about this. Students completed job applications, resumes, and interviews, and they had to interview for the positions that they wanted to go there to hold. Next year, you know better, you do better. So this is our first year. So we're going to integrate that into our curriculum a little bit more, save some instructional time. But when they got to BizTown, you'll see pictures of this here in a little bit. As I mentioned, they ran their own town all by themselves. And it was nice to see the parents, the teachers facilitate this, and really the kids just run the flow of the economy here. This is some of the pre-work that they were going on, brainstorming. You can't just walk in and expect the town to run. There was a lot of pre-work and collaboration that went on beforehand. Here was our mayor and our bank CEO. I mean, it was everything. Everything to run a town was there. Here's our bank on our left. Again. Moving on to programs and initiatives we're focused on in Lincoln, I want to speak briefly about our building goals that we've been working on all year. Progress monitoring our academics, specifically reading accuracy and math accuracy, has been a big focus on us. Our goal is to monitor our students frequently so we can intervene if we have to, provide support if we have to, and just make sure that we're on the right track and catch things before they get too far out of hand. Transparency has been another major focus for us as well. Something that's been very, very positive for us, and my belief is we have a link on our webpage that parents can drop by. It has, I think, 4 or 5 brief questions, and it's just let me know what we're doing. Let me know what we're doing well. Let me know what you don't like. Tell me what your thoughts are. You don't have to put your name in there or anything like that, but that type of open and positive feedback allows us to know how we're serving our families and students. Our teachers have taken it upon themselves to begin a more focused peer observation and coaching program as well, where they are observing one another, providing feedback, having someone come in and have that same teaching and learning, and those conversations are very important. It's been very, very positive, and I look to see that moving forward into even more teachers and across our building as we focus on that next year as well. Our Lincoln Elementary does host the district's intensive learning support program, which means students who are identified who need some additional assistance come to Lincoln, even if they are at other elementary buildings. We currently have 8 students as a part of that program. 20 students are supported. Something else we're very, very proud of is our breakfast participation. It ranges from 30 to 35% on a daily basis. I know our cafeteria staff has made signs to put out in the parking lot during drop-off. They have worked towards the other door to put up signs of what's on the menu today. So students don't even need to walk down and waste their time. They already know when they walk in the door, hey, today's muffin day, I'm heading on down, I'm getting something to eat. And they can make that decision even if they didn't have the menu at home. So we focused on that. Obviously, breakfast is a big part of the day. And, you know, currently our numbers are the highest in the district for that participation there, so we are very, very proud of that. Some other academic highlights we have here. Some of our 5th graders participated in Daughters of the American Revolution. They have an essay contest every year surrounded on historical topics. Various social studies writing standards are in there. We have 3 students here. Jackson Twyman in the middle, who placed 1st at the local level and 2nd at the state level. Jacoby Kuhn, who placed 2nd at the local level, and Sadie Cook, who was an honorable mention at the local level for their essays. They were recognized over here at the Dobbin House not too long ago by the Daughters of the American Revolution. Another contest, I don't have a picture for this because they weren't awarded it yet, but Jacoby Kuhn, 5th grade student who wrote another essay for the American Legion. It was focused on Americanism, and it was judged for 5th and 6th graders, and he won this contest as a 5th grader. Also, we also participate in design and ad and slogan contests. This is a really, really cool event for the kids. They do everything from drawing the pictures to write a slogan and researching. Of course, a lot of research is in there as well. We have Charlotte Orleski, who won honorable mention for Cone Sweet Cone, and Jacoby Kuhn, who won for Jacoby Tire and Auto. We have a new reading program this year, a CKLA program. This is something really, really cool. It's focused on a lot of social study embedded standards. So this is one of our 2nd grade classrooms who, in their reading program, she planned her own Chinese New Year for the kids to participate and get a little bit more involved in what they were doing in reading, kind of a cross-curricular initiative here. Here I am with our kindergarten students. Again, a part of our CKLA curriculum here. This is a really, really cool event for me because the kids, again, I always love being taught by kids, and this is an opportunity for them to teach me how that if I didn't have a hat back in colonial times, it was considered rude. I obviously did not have a hat, so they made me one. And they did not want to give it to me because back then you bartered for things. So they bartered, and I tried to give them 3 minutes of recess. They would not take it. They would not take 3 minutes of extra recess and stuck for 5, and here we are bartering with this. Also my knicker type socks here, which was during that time as well, which they had to have me do to represent the townspeople as well. Something as we focus on our STEEL standards, we've implemented our SAMS labs. Here you'll see some pictures of students who were programming a car. This is in our 2nd grade classrooms, and I've gone in to see SAMS lab implemented with these types of things before. It's amazing to watch them program these things to run races or to go through mazes or to stop and turn and things like that. So we're using our SAMS to implement STEEL, a part of our STEEL's standards as well. As we go into some other academic highlights, looking overarching, we tend to focus here on the ABCs, attendance, behavior, and course performance. I've highlighted our attendance percentages here, which are, in my opinion, very, very impressive here. 95, above 96. Something happened in that area. We dropped down to about 93. But as you see, we're well on the rise here. Even this year, heading above 95% attendance at the elementary level at Lincoln. Very impressed about this. We'll get into a slide a little bit later here about the Warrior Way, and that's been a big, big implementation here. Our disciplinary referrals coming down from 2019 from 203 referrals placed by our teachers, staffs, myself, and then you see it working its way down to currently 42 and 59 last year. That shows the hard work of our students, our parents, and especially our teachers as they implement various things in the classroom to keep students engaged and therefore limit those behaviors that are distractible in the classroom. Here's some of our academic data. This is our reading composite growth from the middle of the year. What you're seeing here is the percentage of students in each grade level who are performing typical, above, or even well above the expected growth at this time. 76% for kindergarten, 73 for first, 55 even for second, 61, 65, and 83 in fifth grade for reading as well. Moving on to math. Again, a picture from our 100th day celebration, of course. But going for math, again, same thing, our math composite score, which incorporates numerous things at the primary level, but then computation and concepts and applications at the third, fourth, and fifth grade level. This is our gross score there, 81 for kindergarten, 82 for first, 52 for second, 64, 72, and 64% in fifth grade. Again, as I mentioned in our behavior slide, we have partnered with the high school quite some time ago in the middle school to implement a K through 12 kind of a behavior system, which is called the Warrior Way, and it is lined up, the whole way through those specific grade levels. Our tenets are be here, be involved, be committed, be kind. What I'm showing you here is a picture when you walk into Lincoln Elementary. Signage is very, very important to us. So you see that sign there. On the right, you'll see signs that classrooms made individually. These are hanging outside of their classrooms, made by the kids, focused on there. So you see that when you walk in, and you see that as you walk through our hallways and into the classrooms as well. So kids earn little Warrior Way tickets for, obviously, those tenants we were talking about, and once they receive 1,000 tickets, they receive a different reward. Our Warrior Way committee, comprised of our teachers, had fundraised. Last year, they went to McDonald's, and they worked at McDonald's, and parents came in, and portions of the earnings that evening were donated to the Warrior Way. They've also spent numerous hours writing grants to fund these types of rewards for the kids. Low budget item that just occurred here. Well, let me back up for 1 second. Our students are recognized for doing those tenets in school, as we mentioned, and they receive a Warrior Way ticket. They come down to the office, they put it in, their name's announced the next day on the announcements. We're averaging probably about 70 to 100 kids being recognized each and every morning. And that is absolutely amazing for our teachers to take the time to do that, our staff to take the time to do that, and for our kids to be displaying that behavior on such a consistent basis. This is one of our most recent rewards. It was a staff versus students soccer game. No staff were hurt during the playing of this game. Also, this was a good representation here of, you'll see our students here lined up and ready to go with their Warrior Way t-shirts on. Our students and our staff this is our showing of these for the first time. Really, really cool event. Now, the most important part of the presentation, I have some friends here who are going to tell you what they love about our school. Sam?
My name is Sam Taylor. My favorite highlight from this year was our field trip to Harrisburg on December 1st, 2023. First, we went inside the Capitol building. The building was huge and spacious. We took a tour and got to sit in the balconies of the Senate and House of Representatives rooms. I was surprised when I learned that the one room we went into wasn't a courtroom, but it was the room where the Supreme Justices meet. Then we went to the museum. I learned so many things about science and nature and science. There were exhibits like fish, dinosaurs, centipedes, and lizards. There were enclosures you can go inside of to see things from the Middle Ages, decades through the 20th century, and now. Last, we watched a movie about space where the screen was on the ceiling. I also wanted to give a shout out to Lincoln PTO for covering the cost of our field trip. Thank you, PTO. It was a great field trip.
Hi, my name is Ben Travis. In science, the things we learned about were animals, elements, technology, earthquake tower, sour gummy worm experiment, and more to come. We have science from 10 to 10:30. My favorite thing we did was the earthquake tower. It was where we made a tourist tower that should withstand an earthquake. My team built a tower that withstood an earthquake. The test subject, or Bob, we like to call him Bob. Bob lived. We called our tower the Gettysburg Cannon. The sour gummy worm experiment was where we found things in the dirt like sour gummy worms, rocks, fruits, nuts, and leaves. We found out that all those things get broken down to make dirt, including worms. The last thing I'm going to talk about is technology. We made a winter wonderland with a walking conveyor belt, Santa in his sleigh, little houses with blinking lights. We coded all this using SAM Lab materials. I can't wait for more projects to come. That is all I want to say.
Hello, I am Aubrey Mullen. This presentation is about chorus. This year in chorus we sang Yonder Come Day, Cape Cod Shanty, The Wellerman, and Shake the Papaya Down. This helped me to sing better. I learned that if you smile when you're singing, it sounds like a screeching bird, but if you sing with your jaw down, it sounds like harmony. My favorite song is Cape Cod Shanty. I liked this song because I loved how it sounded. We had a chorus concert on March 7th at the middle school auditorium. Our new song is called Home. Home is a song full of emotions. It is a song about 5th graders going to the middle school, and we'll miss them. We will be singing Home at the 5th grade breakfast. Miss Woodward was a great chorus teacher.
Hello, I am Hallie Henson. My teacher is Mrs. Peterson at Lincoln. My favorite highlight of this year is the specials that we do. First is gym, with our gym teacher, Mr. Ginter, who is a great teacher. Every time we enter gym, Mr. Ginter makes us do 3 laps. He wants to make sure our hearts are healthy and that we get the exercise we need. Mr. Ginter is always making jokes, and a lot of the times people giggle or laugh. Sometimes we do fun activities and joke around, but he also makes us put in the work, which is good because this teaches us that you can mess around, but you have to put in the work. Mr. Ginter sets up this field day activity where your parents can come with you. Next special is art. It was with Mrs. Stith, and now it is with Mrs. Masonheimer. Art class is so fun because we do lots of projects that look so pretty because we see lots of pretty colors of paint. Whenever Mrs. Masonheimer introduces us to a new project, she gives us clear instructions. She gives us plenty of time to finish our artwork, and that means I can take my time instead of rushing. So thanks, Mrs. Masonheimer, for being a great art teacher. My next special is library. Library is so fun to be at because you have over 100+ books to choose from. Sometimes you get to do makerspaces. Makerspaces are fun games that you get to play with your table group. It's such a surprise because you wouldn't expect doing games in library class. In 3rd grade, we had to do a country project, and I was doing Ireland for my country. Since Mrs. Henderson has 100+ books, I found some books about Ireland, and it really helped me research about Ireland, and that's why I really love library. Last special is music. In music, we don't just do singing. We do all sorts of activities. Sometimes we use recorders, and it's like playing a real instrument in music. And we've been doing some bucket drumming lately, and I love it so much. I feel like it's like using a real drum, except it's a bucket with foam on the top. We have to hold the sticks a certain way. For me, it's a triangle shape, and you have to hold your arms up for the proper way to hold it. So just like a normal drum, you have to do it a certain way so it sounds nice. Sometimes after we learn a new song, we do a fun activity with the new song. I memorize a song so that when we do the activity, I can sing along. Usually the games are super fun. That's all I have to say about the amazing specials and teachers. I appreciate all the great things they do. Thank you for letting me present my favorite highlight of the year.
Hi, my name is Benjamin Zimmerman, the son of Tara and Jonathan Zimmerman, and I play the alto saxophone. My favorite thing about this year is band. We learned so much. We learned lots of different notes. We learned to play loud and quiet. In the first year band concert, the alto saxophones, the flutes, and the clarinets played a song called Surprise Symphony. The brass played Mary Had a Little Lamb. Percussion played Ode to Joy. In the end, the whole band played Hot Cross Buns. For the spring concert, we will play 3 songs. One is called Twinkle Twinkle. The second is called Miss McDonald Has a Band. The third is called Whack-A-Mole. We will be performing Whack-A-Mole with the 5th graders. I'd like to invite you to our band concert on May 14th at 7 p.m. A special thank you to Mrs. McDonald and Miss Query.
Hello, my name is Charlie Tully. My favorite special is gym. The gym teacher is Mr. Ginter. Some of the games are football, basketball, floor hockey, volleyball, hurricane, dodgeball, Star Wars, tug of war, and survivor. My personal favorite is 2-base kickball. I'm going to talk about my favorite game in gym. The roller rolls the ball to the kicker who kicks the ball. There are 2 bases. Who would have guessed that? The hitter runs between the bases. Each time they touch one of the bases, they get a point, while the fielders try to get the ball to the roller. When they get the ball to the pitcher, to the roller, and he or she is on the roller's mound, the runner needs to stop. I am looking forward to Field Day on May 7th.
I'd like to send a special thank you out to Ms. Peterson and our students. I thought it was very, very important for you to hear from them, albeit briefly, but that's why we're here. That tone, those experiences you're sharing with you, that's why you guys are sitting there. That's why we're doing this job. Moving on to future plans, PSSAs today, tomorrow, moving into next week. That's what we're working on here. Again, we're going to continue working on our building goals. That just doesn't stop. That's going to be something we focus on each and every day and continue to focus on, evaluate, of course, at the end of the year and see how we can improve moving into the following year. Future plans, we mentioned some dates there. The kids told you some dates as well. They're on our calendar on the side of our Lincoln page. Field Day, Chalk the Walk, band and orchestra, one more family skate night for those skaters out there, and then our 5th grade farewell, as well as our Gettysburg Annual Memorial Day Parade. We are meeting at Lincoln Elementary at 1:30 to march in the parade. Again, future plans, we were just approved to do the fresh fruits and vegetable program for next year, which is really, really cool. Jeanette and our kitchen staff is getting some vegetables and fruits in that I've never heard of before. So that's going to be something, I think it's shared with the kids for 3 days out of the week next year and exposes them to different types of fruits and vegetables. So it's a really cool event. Ag Lab, we're going to have the Ag Lab come to Lincoln Elementary next year as well. And then focusing moving forward is, of course, doing something I think we do very, very well and we focus on all the time, and that's supporting our students and families. Most recently, we had the book fair at Lincoln Elementary. We had our library teacher wanted to have 2 dress down days because then we earned $488, which allowed every student to leave that week with a book from our book fair, which was absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. We have various parents' nights where we teach our parents our curriculum and be able to how you can assist your students at home, as well as some different fun nights that we will continue moving on. We're going to be focused on onboarding our incoming students, our pre-K students, which you heard about from the first 10. We're going to continue that throughout the summer. Our Roost Harvest is our feeding program. Currently at Lincoln Elementary, 115 bags go home with families each and every Friday. And again, we have a very, very successful clothing closet for students, heavily used in the winter, not so much now, but is there to support our students and families as well. I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for your work. I want to thank you for my friends and family who made time to come here this evening. Lincoln Elementary, a great place to learn. Thank you. Are there any questions that I could answer?
Dr. McFarland, first and foremost, on behalf of the board, thank you to you and your staff for creating what I believe to be, and I know this firsthand, a wonderful learning environment at Lincoln Elementary. 3 of my 6 grandkids go there. I saw several pictures of them along the way. So congratulations on that. In regards to the consistency across the district, do you get an opportunity from time to time to collaborate with our other elementary principals so that there's a degree of consistency in the way of programs and initiatives?
Absolutely. We text message each other all the time. We communicate about everything. In my opinion, and based on my experiences, the experiences you're going to have at Lincoln Elementary are very, very similar, if not identical, to the other 2 buildings, both curricular, both extracurricular. Everything that you see here tonight is going on at the other 2 buildings as well. The collaboration amongst us 3, the staff as well between those buildings, Dr. Parent and Dr. Masser, yes, the collaboration is very, very high, and those experiences across all the K-5 level here at Gettysburg is similar.
Yeah, thank you for that. And then also, you had mentioned progress monitoring and growth scores and so on. When the other elementary principals presented, they gave us just a little bit more in the way of student achievement.
Sure.
You're feeling pretty good about the only really scores that I'm interested in are the growth scores, which are, I think that's what our staff has some degree of control over rather than arbitrary cutoff scores. Are you feeling that our kids, by and large, across the core subject areas are making a year's worth of growth in a year's time?
Yeah, there, as you saw on the percentages there, a large portion of our students are making a year's worth of growth in a year's time. Yeah, Dr. Matzer prior to me did a rather nice presentation on academic data. We chose to focus on some other things and as well include that in there because it is very important. As he mentioned in that presentation, we have a lot of work to do at Lincoln Elementary. It is a daily job, a daily focus. As you mentioned on those goals, the first 2 that we mentioned were reading accuracy and math accuracy. Those were the first 2 things that we were working on. Something that I'm very, very impressed with, we spend time looking at those progress monitoring as well as the data associated with that. We have kids who come to us in kindergarten, who come to us from various schools and things like that, who come to us in 3rd grade reading at a kindergarten level, who are making a 1.5 to 2 years growth when they come to us. That's absolutely amazing.
Yep.
Now that kid, I mean, that student may very well perform basically on the PSSA this year, but they're reading at a 2nd grade level rather than a preschool or kindergarten level was when they came to us. I think that's very important to note.
Thank you, and keep up the great work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. McFarland. If nobody has any...
If you don't mind, I know it's going to take some time, but I appreciate all of the information you just shared, and I feel like the thing that stood out to me was the decline in discipline referrals, and I know that number means a lot for a lot of reasons, but the biggest thing being that many kids are then more engaged in learning. So thank you guys for your hard work on that. That's not always easy, but it shows that it's something that's impacting the school. I wrote these down and I want to say them because students talked, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to thank each kid for a thing that you said, and you heard me chuckle a couple times because I feel like I was brought into your learning through the way you explained things, and I appreciate that. So Sam, I think, was up first, right? The Harrisburg field trip sounds awesome. I've been to that building, and I agree. It's a very big room. It's a cool space to be in, so thanks for bringing the detail there. Ben T, the first Ben, right? Hi, Ben. I am so glad that Bob survived. You had me there, like held on the whole time through your story, and I'm happy to hear that. So congrats on your earthquake tower. For Aubrey, I laughed out loud when you said the thing about the screeching birds because I tell my students that all the time. I say we don't want our faces to be wide like that, right? As much as we want to smile, we're going to show it, but we're going to keep our vowels tall. So nice job, and good job to Mrs. Woodward, too. Haley or Hallie? I can't. Hallie, okay, that was what I thought. Hallie, huge fan of all the things you're talking about. I love the library. I also am a music teacher, so I love bucket drumming, and I appreciate hearing all about that you're doing. Benjamin, Whack-A-Mole sounds like a cool song, so now I want to come hear it, and I will try to be there on the 14th. And Charlie, man, after hearing your explanation of the phys ed games, I'm super stoked for your field day, and I can't wait to hear more about it. So have fun. All right, thank you guys so much for coming and sharing all of that information. It's very neat to hear it from you.
Thank you, Dr. McFarland, and thank you to the parents and the students. It took a lot to present before some strangers, and your parents should be proud of you and keep up the great work. And you may be excused. Okay, they've exited the room. Dave, do we have any citizens' participation this evening? There is no citizens' participation. That brings us to routine approvals. This evening, I'm going to be separating 5.2, the financial report, for a separate vote. So may I have a motion for 5.1, 5.3, and 5.4?
Second.
Question on 5.1, 5.3, or 5.4 on the motion? Hearing no question, roll call. Ryan?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Alice?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Brings us to 5.2, the financial report. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Question?
I have a question about something that
We good?
I forgot to ask. Earlier, I did send Belinda an email and asked her about a few things, but, and I know Dr. Moyer brought up something about, one of the things about Title IX that I guess Stockton Leader did some training on. And I guess my question is, the Title IX regulations were just approved, or the new regulations were just publicized Friday at like 5 a.m. So I'm kind of wondering why we did Title IX training then. Shouldn't we have waited? And I'm just asking anybody.
I'll let Belinda jump in, but
I think the Title IX regulations is an annual review and update as to what is changing. I think the payout of the expenditures was in advance of the new regulations coming out. So I'm sure that down the road here, relatively soon, we're going to have another update coming from Stockton Leader on Title IX.
yeah, there's a lot of those updates tend to be yearly in nature, so what's covered is everything that's occurred since the last update, and then sometimes when there is information that needs to be had to finish a year to start the next year, then that information is shared with us. Not always at a Stockton Leader workshop, but for instance, Lee might sit in with our admin team or just basically provide a packet that we can distribute. So it's pretty fluid, not just Title IX, but pretty much all of the things that kind of rear their head in the legal world, like on a yearly basis. Some of them happen twice a year, some once a year, some every other year. It depends on how much activity there has been at the federal and state level with regards to court cases and legislation. Yeah.
Are there any additional questions on 5.2? Hearing none, roll call. Alice?
Yes.
Jeremy?
I'll abstain, Mr. President. My wife has interest in one of the businesses being paid.
Thank you. Al?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Cindy?
No.
Ryan?
Yes.
And I vote yes. .1 items for board action, special education plan. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Question? Hearing none, roll call. Al?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Alice?
Yes.
And I vote yes. 6.2 is our 2024-25 operating budget. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Belinda, that's your presentation?
No, that's ACTI.
I'm sorry. ACTI operating budget. I apologize. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Question? Hearing none, roll call. Ryan?
Yes.
Cindy?
No.
Michelle?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Alice?
Yes.
And I vote yes. I went one ahead of me there, Belinda. I apologize. I had it scribbled on my piece of paper. Informational item 7.1, the district budget 24-25.
First, I'll apologize. I'm not quite as exciting as all the students that I love to listen to and hear from, but we do provide the support in order for our operations to continue and to give all the great resources to our students, our staff, and our faculty to make a great place to learn for Gettysburg. So before you this evening is the proposed budget information. This is our first review, and so therefore, as we proceed, just this slide in general is a current graph slide just to indicate what our current budget is and the allocation of resources as well as projected to our New Year's budget. So you can see it's not a great change overall in the scope of things, but I'll get into a little bit more detail in just a few minutes. Our expense comparison very similar to the year before, with the major the changes being supplies one year to the next, as well as the other expenses, which is our debt, and I will further explain that as well as we move forward. I know this is very hard to read, and so if the board has had a copy of theirs in front of them, I will highlight to the very middle of the preliminary revenue budget is the column that has the proposed final budget with a 0% real estate tax increase. The immediate column to the right of that shows a 1% tax increase. Now, so for the local revenue and consider, now I'm going to present this budget in terms of 0% tax increase, and I'll explain the 1% a little later as well. Local revenue is an increase in the proposed budget. The local revenue is increased in terms of the real estate tax assessment changes. We changed our collection rate from 96.5% to 97% after review of our collection rate review. And our earned income is up as well as our interest income. So local has increased over current year budget as well as slightly over the actual as well. State sources is also showing an increase. We're showing a small increase in the basic ed subsidy. Now, of course, we are not including what the governor's proposing is his very high end of the spectrum. We are including something. It's likely that we will receive something, but again, it is at the base level to show. And we're also including the subsidy from the previous year that we had not obtained at the point that we were filing our budget. And of course, then our transportation subsidy, this was done as an increase as well as a review of what our actual to budget was from the previous year in terms of the audit. So those areas increased in terms of state sources. Federal was minimal increases. It's basically our Title I allocations. There is no ESSER funding in federal sources. We eliminated that 2 years ago in funding. So this is just clearly Title I, II, III, and IV programs that we have. Other income decreased slightly simply because the actual came in at $5,000. We have budgeted in 23-24 of $22,000. So we brought down the revenue to $5,000 because it was an actual known amount. Other sources are sale of assets. So, of course, if we have one year that's higher than the other sale assets, it will fluctuate. But we brought the revenue stream down to match exactly what we received in 22-23. Also on this slide shows the level of assigned funds and committed funds. So if you'll recall, previous presentations and so forth, we have our PSERS committed funds. This is a fund balance that was designated by the school board, and we have a plan in place to slowly reduce that amount as our PSERS amount changes throughout each budget cycle. The other assigned funds were set for a specific purpose, and we also show that we were going to, with this particular proposed budget, pull down some of the medical assigned funds to help balance the budget where needed. So overall, we have the preliminary revenue is 4.4% overall, but overall it's 8.2% increase, and it's using fund balance to get to that 8.2%. Our preliminary expense slide, we are at overall, an overall expense pretty much is 3.1% over current year. Our CPI index is 3.5 to 3.6, depending upon which month you're using. So our expense budget that we're proposing is below the CPI, which is always a great thing. Our salary wages in comparison, I'm also looking at the 0 and the 1% columns shall stay the same simply because expenses are not necessarily changing. It's the revenue slide that changes. But again, salary and wages are listed at the top. Benefits also included. So overall, our salary and benefits went up 1.9%, and on the average, our benefits 2.6%, and for an overall average of 2.2. Other areas you'll see some reductions actually, which is professional services, purchase of property services, supplies, and other objects. But you also see some increases in your other financing terms, other purchase of services, as well as a small portion of property and equipment. I'll explain a little bit later of increases and decreases to this budget. Our overall expenses for the value of the meal of $3 million is $75,944,680, and that is, as I said before, a 3.1% increase. Below here, you'll see increases and decreases of unassigned fund balance. Our unassigned fund balance is what is used, and typically we set up an unassigned fund balance to help balance our budget for the next planning year. And we typically like to wait to our audit to receive the true numbers. This is typically while we plan for our budget. Again, we're planning a year and a half ahead before the actual budget does transpire and find out your actuals are. So while we do plan for the best and we plan to use our unassigned fund balance, our auditing results came out more favorable than what was anticipated, but then again, we use that in our unassigned fund balance to help balance the budget the following year, and we set those funds aside to do so. So as it stands right now, the general fund per se, if you look at revenue over expenditures, we're at $2.3 million that we are searching for, and the unreconcilable difference at 0% increase is $357,073. Now, that means we need to find $357,073 to balance the budget, whether that $357,000 comes with more fund balance or if it comes with a reduction of expenditures or an increase in revenue to drop that number. All three of those things can affect that. But this particular point in time at the proposed budget, we are pretty much looking for a total of $2.7 million to address the deficit here.
Sure, and I'll point out that over the past several years, we've been working to meet some of the aspects of the resolution that the board had passed with regards to budget. One of those things was moving revenues closer to expenditures. So just a couple of years ago, there was about a $4.6 million gap between revenues and expenditures. So now it's a $2.3 million gap. So we've closed that gap. With really kind of minimal tax increases. Our average tax increase over the past 6 years has been 0.67 on a yearly basis. So how do we close the gap? It's mostly been reducing expenditures. So if you look up at that spreadsheet there, we've really tried to leave programs and student experiences alone. So those numbers are still positive. Most of the minuses you see are in areas that aren't real specific to instruction, right off the bat. So that's why you see some of the numbers that you see. Thanks, Belinda.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we talked a little bit fund balance. Some of these numbers were coming right from the previous slide, so I'll review quickly here. So the 0%, which is the column next to the right-hand side, which is 24-25 projected 6% fund balance at 0% tax increase. So our overall fund balance is 630.24. This was, as per according to the audit, is $6.9 million. That stays the same whether it's 0% or whether it's 1% in the column. Our 24-25 proposed revenue for 0%, it is $72,706,804. And if we're looking at proposed 1% tax increase, which of course the board would need to take action further, then it would become $73,063,877. As you can see, we're proposing a portion of the PSER's committed fund balance as well as the future medical cost to address the increase in medical costs this year. So overall, between the fund balance and the proposed expense account here, you can see that we're looking for the 2,379,460, and the 357,73 is yet to balance the budget at a 0% increase. In order to maintain a 6% fund balance, according to our policy says it needs to be between 6 and 8%. The 6% is what's listed here. So we need to maintain unassigned fund balance no less than 6%, which is $4,556,680. That's with whatever option. With 1% option, we're looking at reducing the unreconciled deficit. And I can explain that in just a little bit.
Belinda, just as a reminder to folks, how many months of expenditures does $4.5 million cover in our?
It will cover, and I have a slide from that references days cash on hand. So $4 million days cash on hand is probably about 20 days. Okay. All right, so what really changed with our budgeting process? So increases along the side. So we had salary. Salary increases. Remind you that we're still in negotiations, so subject to change. We have inclusion of a fourth police officer. There's been discussion at previous board meetings about a fourth police officer, and so the 24-25 budget does include that. We also have had inclusion of the girls' head wrestling coach and one assistant. This was brought forth during the budgeting process by the administrator, as well, and also Dr. Matzer has been involved in those communications. So during the budget process, this was brought forward, and this was a request to increase the program accordingly to have as such. So it's an increase to the budget. Medical insurance did increase. We're second year, largest experience claims on account. So yes, we're still in the high claims cost area, and hopefully we're coming down off of that within the next 2 years following next year's budget. We have the ACTI tuition. You just approved the 2024-25 ACTI budget, and with that there was a tuition increase for behalf of Gettysburg students. Of course, nothing's changed from previously. Our cyber charter schools continue to increase. Our actuals are trending more than what we're budgeting. So there's no surprise here that we still continue to climb, not as greatly as once before, especially during COVID, but again, we still are seeing increases in cyber charter. Our transportation cost is increasing. This is couple of multiple factors into this. This is the transportation contract. This is diesel fuel costs. This is issues with drivers, having drivers on board, and just the need for transportation and vans is unreal from what I've ever seen before. We have vans addressing specialized student needs more and traveling further distance than we have ever before. And we need to serve the students, so there's no way around not providing transportation for these students. So there is an increase there. And again, of course, our technology, software, and supports. Now, you may ask, what is this? Well, we had to increase the technology, software, and the supports in order to make sure that we're remaining consistent with all the cyber potential attacks that are coming to us. We're getting servers, we're buying software, we needed insurance, and to ensure that we are protected in every aspect that we can potentially foresee for us. We have brought folks in, if any of you have talked to Mr. Williams, we brought folks in to try to infiltrate the system. So far we have a thumbs up report, and we want to keep doing that. But there is a cost to being secure, no matter which way you look at it. The last item for the increases, you may have heard of articles in the paper already, but this is for the ACTI bond future debt funding. So if it's not a surprise to you, ACTI is looking at purchasing a building or finding land and to build a building. So of course, they're going to need to take out some bond in order to do that. All the sending schools will need to budget money to help pay for the future debt as they proceed in that fashion. So currently, the budget, as it stands, includes a 1% increase based on $10 million. Now, That's 10 million. So again, if the budget of ACTI's building projects range in a $20 million phase, well, of course, the $10 million that we have appropriated is going to need far more money as we move forward. But this budget is including we've expended 1%, and therefore that's the other side of the 1% that we're asking for to help balance this. Once the 1% is put into place, then that 1% will remain a residual amount thereafter. We will always have 1% of the budget to help fund a future ACTI bond in place. So that, in a nutshell, are the increases for the 24-25 budget, as well as the decreases, because these were handled, in advance of before coming to the board meeting and presenting the budget.
Belinda, can I hit the one thing over on ACTI before we move on? The information that Belinda just shared, a lot of that was covered in the feasibility study that Sean shared with the board when he came to the board meeting. He went to each board in the county and shared the feasibility study. So the goal there, obviously, is to start building capacity within the budget to meet our district share of any debt service that we would realize from an ACTI bond. Obviously, as the bond increases, the payment goes up. So for those folks that have been around for a while, the district took a similar approach when there was long-range planning for the high school HVAC system. So each budget over a period of, I don't know if it was 5 or 7 years, Belinda.
7 years.
So for 7 years, the district increased the revenue on a yearly basis, so that at the end of the 7 years, there would be less money to borrow for the HVAC project, and the district built capacity over time. So, like you've seen other districts in the county doing with this year's budget, we're just basically building in our share of the bond. Thanks, Belinda.
Mm-hmm. So as I mentioned, the decreases are a result of reviewing the audit and areas of reduction that we could feel safe and secure to do. So therefore, the following decreases had already taken place. We reduced our workman's compensation. We are a part of SDIC. We're self-insured into a trust. And so therefore, we've had some really great claims experience, and therefore the funding that we had set up initially, we were able to reduce according to what the proposed payments are coming through for 24-25. We had a reduction in IU services, and this is really looking at some of the services that we initially had with IU as we budgeted. This is areas where the IU hasn't been able to meet our level of performance, and so of course we adjusted our budget accordingly for that. We had some reductions in purchase of property service, and so for those folks who have been around, I'll just back up for a second. So workman's comp is the 200 benefit section, and in terms of object. The IU professional services is a 300 object. The reduction of purchase of property service is a 400 object. That is disposal, lawn care, and water and sewage. If you recall, over the last few board meetings, we've purchased some lawn equipment and are able to handle our own lawn care services more so ever now than what we had before. Reduction in supply, that's a 600 object account. Those in that area, not just supplies for the classroom, but this also handles natural gas, fuel, oil, and electricity, because it is a supply that we endure for a cost of business. Now, reduction in budgetary reserve, this is the 900 category. Historically, for this, we had, going back since I've been here, historically this account was set at $500,000. Over the course of the years, we've slowly reduced this to $400,000. Then we brought it down to the current year budget of $200,000. So I feel we're going to reduce this to $100,000. So we reduced $100,000 to keep a budgetary reserve of $100,000 for next year's budgeting cycle.
And as Belinda said, the reduction in supply really over the past, 4, 5, 6 years, the way we've been coming in real close to zero without affecting student programs is really kind of cutting that area down to where we really can't cut it anymore. Those areas, the budget heads are still operating with the actual amounts from the 2016-2017 school year. That's their target. So there haven't been any increases to those lines for about 7 or 8 years.
And that is their budget control. So building departments don't necessarily control salary or benefits. It is everything from 300 category down to the 900, I should say 700 category, because 900 is typically the business office category, which is our debt services, as an interest in principal portions of our debt. So really, as Dr. Perrin has said, the budget directive when we issue the budget is you need to come in at no less than current budget or your 16-17 actuals. And the buildings have been running at the 16-17 actuals since I've been here. And so, and yet if comes up a need, and of course a need arises every so often, we address it with other areas of the budget that may be able to budget transfer one category to another to handle some of the expenditures. But for the most part, these decreases are relatively fair certain to say that it can be reduced without affecting our normal programs. All right, so fund balance forecast. For a few of our new members may not have been a part of the time that the district had adopted a resolution to address the deficit between the revenue and expenditures. This slide is a representation for the 24 budget and the projected 25 budget. If the 25 budget projected stays the same for the next 3 years, our 3-year financial outlook by fiscal year 2026, the district expected is to trend toward a negative fund balance of $3.5 million. Likewise, if we do a 5-year outlook without addressing revenue, and that our 2028 district fund balance is projected to trend to a negative $10 million. So again, this is assuming that we're going to continue to collect the same amount of revenue and not increase our expenditures. That's very unlikely, but this is a representation of we do need to find more revenue to address more expenditures, especially as costs do continue to increase, as contracts are renewed across the board. Whatever services that we have will increase. So there's no certainty or guarantee that costs will remain the same for the next 4 years. So without addressing revenue over the next 4 years, we could potentially be looking at a negative $10 million of fund balance. And this is the point of the slide that I just wanted to share. And it speaks to the budget resolution that we had tried to, bring before the board, adopted. So, we have got a lot of work ahead of us, to get to a neutral position, but this is just a forecast to say what would happen if we didn't do a thing, and where would our fund balance end up being as we continue to use fund balance year after year.
I think probably the best, one of the easiest ways to show how much fund balance is being used over the past several years. If you go to the previous slide, Belinda, keep going. Must be after that.
No, it's here.
Okay, go back to. Keep going back. Keep going
Here.
back. Nope.
No.
Nope. There it is.
There.
Don't move.
Got it.
All right. So when I arrived here in Gettysburg in 17, and we were doing the 18-19 budget, then obviously we were looking at like the 17-18 audit. So the number up top where you see fund balance on June 30th of that year, right now we're riding at about 6.9 million. When I first arrived in Gettysburg, that number was 14. So we've really been spending down the fund balance, is all I want to point out. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. So, a lot of discussion has been, well, you've got all this fund balance, why don't you use it? Well, and I know we've said over the years that fund balance is our cash account to be used to address the needs before real estate taxes become available to us to utilize for expenditures. So this shows the average daily cash on hand for the years presented in terms of fund balance. So in 2019, we had 47 days of cash on hand of fund balance to make sure that we were operating without due unjust need or any concern. Fast forward to 2023, end of the audit. We are now at 35 days cash flow. With the budget in 2024, if everything were to fall exactly the way that budget is, we're down to 14 days cash flow of fund balance. So that is the 4.5 million, basically is where we're at. And then, of course, in 2025, even though we're trying to maintain 6% and all of their fund balances are potentially reduced, the unassigned fund balance would be 2 months' worth of coverage. That's not a lot. And so, of course, then as you head towards the 2028, without addressing the revenue expense deficit, we are now looking at 48 days in the opposite direction to have cash flow before tax revenue comes in. Now, our tax bills do go out July 1st, but first day collection, we're already operating July 1. First day collection is in September. So there is a substantial amount. And this is not including receivables. So this is really calculating on a 365-day calendar year. And this is looking at as unassigned fund balance, what is our cash available to make our bills until cash revenue comes in for real estate taxes. So this is just a snapshot in talking about, it's visually great to see. Sometimes when you hear it, it doesn't really comprehend itself, but this is showing how many days the cash is available and on hand, history to present and also to future.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So I'm hearing you saying that this has been something that we've been spending down, and that part of that was that there was a goal to do that to some degree. I imagine that we're allowed to have a certain amount in this fund balance, but not
6 to 8%. 6 to 8%. So the district historically for many years kept 8.
Right.
And then probably 4 or 5 years ago, as we were given direction to run pretty close to 0 for a number of years, then we went down closer to that 6 to enable that to occur.
So when we're looking at a chart like this, obviously that's forecast into the future should we change nothing, and negative is not good. But I'm wondering, what is looking at numbers like that, days cash on hand, what is the number that would qualify as 6% or 8%? Do you know what I mean? Like
It's on
within
the-
what amount? It's on the other one.
It's on the other
chart.
side.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
So it's the
4.5 million.
4.5 million would be an unassigned fund balance.
And Ms.
Sure.
Broadway-
I guess I'm trying to get. I'm trying to make these.
Yeah.
This is the first time I'm getting a chance to look at these.
Sure, no problem.
So I guess what I'm wondering is, I want this to make sense in those numbers too. So you said that was 6. So that amount of million is how many days? Do you know what I mean?
Correct. That would be 4.5 million would be the end of 24, which would be the 14 days.
Okay. So 14 days is right around the 6%.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, and also just to mention that it was just on the tip of my tongue. Just also to mention that the fund balance, again, this can change because fund balance is a percent of expenditures. So if expenditures change in next year's budget up or down, it's 6% of that number is the minimum amount according to our policy. So, while you're looking at a snapshot in time of what we're presenting in the budget, the expenditures that we're looking at are currently at 75.9 million. 6% of that is 4.5 million that we need to maintain. So if 75.9 million up or down, depending upon the decisions that we make within the next month and a half, then that 6% number would likely change too, because it's a percent of expenditures, not revenue. Okay. And then to wrap up, next steps. So our timeline for board meetings coming up. May 6th, we'll recommend and adopt a proposed final budget. So hopefully we can have some discussion as to changes that you'd like to see done, recommended questions or anything that comes up for, between now. But May 6th, we'll propose and recommend and adopt a proposed budget. That is in order to meet the timelines underneath Act 1. We must have 30 days that needs to be available for public inspection. So then, of course, May 20th, we'll have a public board meeting, public budget hearing meeting, which will be in advance of the board meeting that evening. June 3rd, we'll have the review and the recommend the final budget. And then June 17th, we have slated to review, adopt, and set in stone all the necessary resolutions to adopt a 24-25 final budget. June 30th is still the deadline to file all the necessary documents with PD, as always mentioned. And then the last slide really is questions for the board. And if there was anything that you wanted to ask. And
I go back to right before that, could you go back to the previous slide, Linda? Just a reminder, the May 6th budget, we need that to basically meet state guidelines. What we do then is we continue to look at revenues and expenditures, and if there's any change, we incorporate those into the final budget for approval in June. Things that occur between now and that time frame, we find out a little bit more about homestead, farmstead, and how that's going to interact with local real estate, those kinds of things. We'll get a better sense from the tax office in terms of local assessment changes. So we always incorporate that every year in the final, but for the 6th, we just need to hit the target of putting something on file.
the 6th is a recommended proposed final. It is not the final. So while we ask to take action, it's to meet necessary requirements by PDE.
Yeah, Belinda, I actually have a comment and then maybe a follow-up question. And I don't want to get spun up this evening. This is the first time we're seeing it, and there are so many throughout the budget process unknowns, and you mentioned a bunch of it. We don't know what our revenue looks like. Here's where, after all the years, and I'm beginning to see a trend, and you and I had this conversation, but for the rest of the board, we have to start really taking a look at what we're doing with our audit. We're sitting here this evening. I don't want to say we're blind, because that would be unfair to the people that do the audit, because we did get a preliminary audit. We did get it. We got a presentation and an overview. But I'd feel a lot more comfortable as we go into the budget process if the audit was in our hands and it was made to the public so that people could take and peruse it. We would have an opportunity to look at the audit. I don't expect to see anything nefarious there. I know we passed our audit with flying colors. It's more of a perception thing for me, so to speak. And I think I'm accurate in saying there could be some minor modifications to the final audit when we do get it, opposed to what we got in the presentation, but I don't think it's anything significant, or we would have heard about that. So as we move forward from a board's perspective, I think we have to rectify, or at least try to figure out how we get our audit back to us in a more timely manner, because I think if I'm accurate, each year as we go into budget season, it seems like it's delayed a little bit more. Now it's 2 weeks, and then it's 3 weeks, and it's starting to see a progression there. And I'm obviously not throwing the auditors under the bus, but I think that's critical for us to make an informed decision as we go through the budget process.
Mr. President, I'm not throwing the auditors under the bus either, but it's not acceptable. Here we are sitting here trying to do a budget. We don't even have the audit, and I'm with you. We were given a presentation, but this is just not acceptable, and something's going to have to change with this. We cannot sit here and make honest judgment on what we're doing with taxpayer money when we're not even 100% sure everything was clean. Not that it's not going to be. I have no doubt that it is, but, from the year before.
Right. And Jeremy, I'm trying to, I've noticed the trend, and in talking with Belinda, I feel comfortable that the final audit as it comes through won't have anything significant that would change what the presentation of the budget is this evening. I think it just comes from a transparency perspective, or a thing out to the public that, we're mandated to have the audit. We came through clean, and we don't have the audit in our hands
Agreed.
as we're sitting here having our first budget meeting. So, Belinda, I've just taken that for another time. That's not something about this evening, but I think I'm not echoing all the school board members, but from my perspective, I think that we need to ensure that our audit comes back in a timely manner, and that's not your problem or your fault. But I'm not talking to the auditors.
Absolutely.
I'm wondering if I can, in whatever way this is possible, Belinda, just looking at the timeline, since these are coming up on our next couple of, Monday meetings, I would love to be able to ask more questions. And like I said, I didn't get a chance to look at this today between it coming in and now. And I'm wondering if at all possible, if it's able to have that maybe or before the Monday of the meeting next time, so that I can come prepared with kind of better looking at it and better understanding what questions I have to ask. Thank you.
Yeah, and Alice, I know historically, the administration has, and you'll get an email, opens the door to one or two people individually. Obviously, we can't meet as a group, but if you have questions, I know in past years, board members have met individually with Belinda or Jason to get questions answered, to be more prepared or feel more comfortable, I guess.
No, yeah, I understand
exactly.
that. I have no problem reaching out to her. I just mean for what is
Right.
being presented. I didn't get to look at it before it was presented.
Right.
So I wasn't sure of my questions. But I understand if it's a thing that has to come on the Monday, it does. But if you're able to send it a little bit earlier, that would be
Sometimes we're able to,
Lovely.
and sometimes we finish it at 3:45. And then we present it at the board meeting, and then we post it the next morning to the district's business office website. So the district's business office website is where this is currently posted along with the board agenda.
I'd like to just thank the administration, Belinda, Jason. We've been on this 0% pretty hard here, this board, and that's what you guys brought to us. And thank you for doing that. Thank you for showing us what that looks like for future. And also, with ACTI and the hopes of them being able to branch out on their own and expand, what they have to offer to our students and all the other participating schools, it's safe to say that I think we need to kind of be proactive with this. We don't want to get caught, in the future and put ourselves in a real, or set up another board, that may be after us to the point where they have to make a significant increase so that we can actually, fund something. I think the being proactive is, in my opinion, is a good way to look at this, to try and limit that in the future. And I appreciate you bringing the zero. I appreciate you showing us what that percentage is, that we need to maybe try and work towards to get ACTI, get that set up in the future.
I was going to say, I couldn't agree more. And it is a little scary thinking about the forecast in the next few years with going with a 0%, as much as that sounds great. I've seen many districts over the years, try doing that, then all of a sudden they have to have a big hit. I would much rather do small incremental increases over time than to have zero increases for a few years and then have a really big hit. I think that's more harmful than doing small increases incrementally. But Jason and Belinda, I'm interested then in with all this information that you have, I'd really like to hear what your recommendation is. I appreciate the fact that you're bringing us a 0 or 1% or whatever, but I would be interested in your professional opinion based upon your background knowledge to keep us financially stable for the long term, not for the short term.
I think,
Thank you.
as superintendent, my recommendation would be to go with 1% to pre-fund ACTI. I think it's a can that's been kicked down the road for 50 years, and I don't think that it can be kicked any further. I think that our kids not just in the district, but just in the county, deserve the types of experiences that kids are getting in other counties and have been for decades. I think that there's a lot of support right now for not just expanding the seats and the programs we already have, because even kids that want summer programs don't get in because there aren't enough seats. So making more seats in the programs that we have that are strong, and then offering more programs as Sean Eckenrode shared in the feasibility study, offering more programs to our kids where kids come out with certifications and a livable wage, I think is really kind of what it's all about. So I think that since the 5 districts in the county that are committed to ACTI have all committed to kind of building that into their budgets this year, I would want to make that commitment and saying, like, we're going to start building the capacity to do our part to make it happen, just not for our kids but for the county.
Yeah, I don't think the general public, unless you're a parent of a child that has tried to get into a program and could not, I don't think a lot of people really realize, not all kids go to college. There's kids that want to do the trades, and we need our young adults that, whether it's plumbers, electrician, HVAC, excavators, builders, you name it, our nurses, so on and so forth, culinary, and I think it's our job that we try to provide as much as we can. We have a lot of kids that are missing out each year because we only have so many seats available. And to me, it's not acceptable. We're not helping them. We're not doing them any favors. I wish ACTI the best. I hope they can get something off the ground. They can find a piece of property, get a building, and I think we need to do our part to fund our part of that the best that we can to offer, our kids in this school district, the best opportunity moving forward.
So to your point, Al, on May 6th, we would recommend a proposed final budget of 1%, and then the board would vote, and we would go from there.
And Al, just to put it in perspective, I know our board has been absolutely great with trying to maintain 0% increases, but to look at ACTI funding and use fund balance for a perpetual cost is something that is really not fiscally sound to do. And in terms of finances, just while we do not have the homestead farmstead numbers right now, because it could very well likely, the 1% could very well likely be a net zero change. If we're looking at the average assessed homeowner right now, as it is, without homestead farmstead in consideration, the average assessment is $269,424. Taxes with a 1% increase on the average homeowner would be $30.31 annually added to their tax bill. So dependent upon homestead farmstead numbers that come in, very well make that, like a few years ago, make that a zero effect. So it's really relatively little to no bearing on a homeowner's property parcels. But I will not know that number until May 1st. So the next meeting, we should be able to have that information to provide you.
Right, so we are, I'm going to go back. We're premature here right now. We don't have our numbers. And let me make sure I'm accurate here. If you present a zero budget, which is what you did this evening, you showed us both, but if you put a zero budget proposed, the board voted on it, and the board then, based upon the numbers from the time that we vote on a proposed budget to the final budget, if the numbers come in on the revenue where there's an uptick, or if the board decides that it wants to look 5 years down the road and not burden taxpayers or the future board, we want to be able to start funding or setting away funds for ACTI. We can take that zero and move that or fluctuate that to say 05 if we wanted to, depending on where our numbers fall. We're not locked in. But if you present a proposed budget at 1, can we go back down?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
You can, you're, until your final is done, you can go up or down.
I'm confused. It was the
Act 1.
Act 1. I apologize.
Yes.
Act 1.
Yeah,
Yeah.
our index.
Yeah, right. There, we don't have that movement.
Our index is 6.2.
Right.
We didn't put that anywhere on the presentation.
Well, no, and I'm going to echo that, and I'll get off the stand here. I mean, we've asked you by resolution to come in with a 0, and you've effectively done that. And now the board will have to weigh out, when we have the big picture, what we're looking to do for the future.
And Belinda, do we, can we be optimistic at all that that we will know our state subsidy by the time of our final budget
No.
in June?
No.
No chance.
No. And guidance has been is don't count on the full amount that's proposed, because that would be,
Yeah.
not to be a negative word, but that would be suicidal.
Yeah, I agree. You're somewhere in the middle, am I right?
Yeah, I do have an increase at the minimum amount that's proposed. Rest assured, we are going to get something, but we're not going to get the large number that's being proposed.
Yeah. I'm thinking we're going to get more than the minimum, but I think that's a good way to budget conservatively.
Anybody have any additional questions?
Actually, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Belinda, when you were talking about the increases, things that were costing us more money, salaries, police officer, wrestling coach, you had in there you were talking about transportation. Can you maybe explain to me why we're having so many more vans? I mean, I understand we're required to make sure kids can get to where they need to be, but why is that? I mean, when I leave my house in the morning, there is no less than 3 buses that come directly past my house. So, and I don't know anything about busing. I don't know anything about how, Mr. Bowling works all of it. He's probably done a great job all those years. But why are we having more student vans and whatnot?
I can grab it. It tends to a lot of the kind of special transportation where you might see like a kid on a van driving down Route 30. A lot of that's very specific to the individual. So it's either, no pun intended, it's either driven out through an IEP where basically for special education services, due to that child's needs, maybe they can be on a van with 1 person, maybe they can be on a van with 2 people. That might drive how the transportation is set up. But there are other special accommodations as well that probably the average person isn't even aware of. We transport a ton of kids that fall within the McKinney-Vento, the homeless legislation. So we send vans we have vans that pick kids up in Harrisburg
And travel to Lancaster and back.
And bring students to our schools. So
also for students who are in foster care. That's
Yes.
that's slightly different federal law that oversees that. That's ESSA is for students in foster care, and then McKinney-Vento, students experiencing homelessness.
Yeah.
Tons of cross-county transportation, never mind just across district, but across counties.
And I would say, like, when I went into when I was a middle school principal, we'll say like 2001, I probably had 1 van come to mind. You know what I mean? Like, just in that 20-year period, the complexity of how we transport has changed significantly. So what we're seeing right now is as complex as it's ever been and as expensive as it's ever been, for sure.
In terms of the buses, Michelle, they could be going by your place but branching off in different locations. And there are size requirements. Like only in so many numbers of students are permitted on a bus to get your maximum amount of reimbursement. And so they could be just happen to be going by, but they could be going by and then branching off to different directions. And or the concern is how many students are on the bus. Like, so the rider count is important. And it could be just one person could change that count to where another bus would have to pick up. So it really, truly, the transportation changes yearly, and sometimes when new enrollments come in, they'll change again. Hopefully fewer buses in new enrollments, but they do. It's a constant change.
Well, there's literally 2 new stops out by my house.
Right.
That weren't there last year, 2 brand new stops. But when I leave in the morning, there's a van that goes in front of my house this way, and there's a van that comes this way, and there's like 1 kid on those vans. And I'm like, what is going on?
Well, a lot of
But
times.
but let me ask you a question though. You're talking about, so we have homeless kids, I get that. But why are we transporting kids from Lancaster or Harrisburg here? If they live in another county, why are we transporting them here to be educated?
So look to your policy 251, and which is students who, they have a federal entitlement to remain in the school district of origin. So if they were living here at the time that they experienced the situation causing the homelessness, or if they were originally enrolled in this district when they became a student subject under foster care, subject to court jurisdiction, then and possibly juvenile students who are in the juvenile justice system as well. So those are things somewhat out of the district's control in terms of the federal entitlement to remain enrolled in the district that they were enrolled in whenever the situation occurred.
The other call we usually
I think
get.
those are questions that the public would probably be asking as well, so.
Yeah, and sometimes too, you get the question, at least when I was a principal, most of my buses showed up to school half full. And it's because that whether it's utilized or not, the transportation director assigns every student that's not in walking distance to a bus. The parent might choose to drive their child all year, but they're still assigned to a bus and still taking up a seat, on that bus, because if they ever chose to be on it, there has to be room for them. So there are a lot of variables. It's very complex. That's why I'm happy we have Bill.
Anything additional? Thank you for the presentation. Informational item 7.2 policy sabbatical leave. Are there any questions from any board members related to that policy? This is a first read or second first read?
Right. All 3 of those policies are simply the last 3 policies in the 300s in order to finish out that series. So, yeah. So whenever you see these 3 up for approval, probably about that same meeting, there would be an action item to retire the 400s and 500s because everything's been incorporated into 300s.
Next policy is 388.1 compensated professional leave. Are there any questions? 7.4 policy 399 uncompensated leave also. Last one was compensated professional leave. This is uncompensated leave. Any questions? Hearing none, I know we have at least a legislative report.
Thank you, Becky. Could you hit the lights? Could you hit the lights over the screen? Thank you. Belinda, our charter school expenses about $3.5–4 million. 4.2 million. So that makes this kind of a fitting, the timing of this. I promise to be brief, Mr. President, but I did want to share a few things here in what's happening with the General Assembly in Harrisburg. These organizations that you see here are school-affiliated organizations that have collaborated on a letter to the General Assembly for consideration. Becky, if you would go ahead and slide that down. Not to insult your intelligence, but I'm going to quickly read through this, and then I have a couple of quick graphs I'd like to show you that kind of reinforces what we're talking about. So on behalf of the undersigned organizations and our collective memberships, we urge the General Assembly to support the inclusion of cyber charter school funding reform in the upcoming 24-25 state budget. 20 years of existence, the time has come to enact meaningful reforms to the way cyber charter schools are funded. However, we want to make one point clear at the outset. Our organizations are not calling for the abolishment of cyber charter schools as a form of school choice. We are calling for cyber charter schools to be funded consistently, and in a manner that appropriately reflects lower cost providing virtual education. Would you now go to the slide with the local slide with the Adams County schools. This is the ridiculousness of what's happening with cyber charter schools. In the 6 districts in Adams County, we all pay a different rate every time one of our students goes to a cyber charter school. Even though their expense is consistent, it doesn't change. At Bermudian Springs, they get $13,800. At Upper Adams, they get $13,300. At Gettysburg, they're getting $12,700. Heaven forbid, then, what happens, and I don't think there's any school psychs in the room, but many times what I've seen happen, even in my last couple of years as a superintendent, and then since then it's gone up exponentially, many of our kids will all of a sudden leave here without an IEP and then develop some type of minor visual or auditory processing issue or some type of disability, and there is not a tiered program. Whether it's a tier 1 or a tier 3 student, they're receiving then double. The cyber charter school receives double for something that has minor services. Back to the letter, if you would, Becky. So, cyber charter school tuition costs for school districts now exceed across the Commonwealth over $1 billion and impact all school districts in the state. The current method of funding cyber charters provides cyber charters with vastly different tuition rates despite students being provided the same education. Based on tuition rates reported to the Department of Ed for 23-24, rates for non-special ed range from $8,600 to $26,500, and then for special education students, $18,700 to $61,200. The 21-22 school year, the latest year for which data are available, nearly 98% of special education students enrolled in cyber charter schools required specialized programs and support services, which were in the lowest cost tier reported to the Department of Ed. In the public school system, if a student is a paraplegic or has to have their own personal aid, we take care of that. Many times in the cyber charter schools or the charter schools, even the brick and mortar schools, those students aren't even considered for admission and whatnot. Yet school districts are required to pay the cyber charter schools the same tuition rate for all special ed students, regardless of their actual needs of the student. Cyber charter schools also do not have the same level of cost as their brick and mortar colleagues, but benefit from a tuition rate calculation that treats them as a brick and mortar charter school. So for example, cyber charter schools do not maintain a physical school building and do not incur costs for maintenance, utilities, and other overhead that go along with it. We support reforms that will reduce the cost and burden of cyber charter tuition on school districts. So number one, that statewide that the tuition rate does not exceed $10,000. There was a big push in legislation for an $8,000 rate. Somehow that's been compromised, and it seems like, I don't know what's happening there exactly. But I will say this, in my opinion, and I think in the opinion of many others, we're being gouged at $10,000 per student for non-special ed, with a provision that requires all districts to pay the statewide tuition rate or their calculated charter school tuition rate, whichever is lower. And then number two, as I talked about with special education students, there is a spectrum of students that have needs. Some of those needs are very low interventions, which these cyber charters are getting double the payment currently. Most of those fall in that category. Some students, though, do require a high degree of need. Most of those students are staying within the public school systems where they're getting their needs met at a much better rate than they are in the cyber charter schools. With these recommendations, they are not that it's all that's needed to accomplish cyber charter reform, but we believe these reforms will reduce the impact of cyber charter school tuition on school districts and their local property taxpayers, and ensure the school districts are paying fairly for the cost of providing a virtual education. We hope that you will support these reforms being included in the upcoming state budget. If you would, Becky, would you put the one then for these, can you increase that a little bit? Check this out. in red for the cyber charters that are here in the state of Pennsylvania. These schools, in the way of their graduation rate, in the way of their English language arts, in the way of their math scores, in the way of their science scores, the ones that are in red are 20 percentage points lower than the statewide average of our public schools. 20 percentage points lower. Take a look at some of the really popular ones like Commonwealth Charter. Take a look at PA Cyber Charter. Across the board, all red. Bottom line, in my opinion, and I think the data supports this, these kids are getting a substandard education. There's no doubt about it. And that's part of the reason why I'm like a dog with a bone and pretty passionate about this issue. Go back to the Adams County one for a second, Becky. So as Linda said, we're at 4.2 million with House Bill 1422, which was approved in the state legislature in the House of Representatives and was not even brought up yet in the Senate. I've had many calls in to Doug Mastriano's office. I'm hoping some of you and those that are listening virtually might consider doing the same. But the potential savings for us are pretty significant, almost $700,000 just for Gettysburg, which would make a nice dent as we prepare for the 24-25 year budget. Finally then, just a couple other remarks. And again, if this doesn't get your dander up, I don't know what will. Many of those cyber charter schools that I showed there across the state have full-time lobbyists working for them that are being paid $100,000 or more. They provide luxury lounges and sponsors at sporting and concert venues. They have operational revenues exceeding 50% of their expenses. Fund balances in excess of 110% of their total annual expenses. And we're supposed to keep our fund balance at a certain rate, supposedly of what PDE is requiring us to do, but they're not holding these groups accountable. And then also, as you've probably seen along the highway, many of them have a very high advertising budget, and they have giveaways of gift cards to Target, Walmart, and other commercial places that they give away to the parents and they give away to the kids. Why? Because they can, because they've got, they're so, they have so much money, they almost don't know what to do with it. So with that said, I'd like to wrap up my report. Becky, thank you very much for your help.
Thank you, Al. Any program reports?
No, I deferred my reports to the talented children from earlier.
I was hesitating to ask you.
Mr. Hassinger, just a reminder to all board members, if you haven't turned in your financial ethics report, please do so by May 1st.
I will be one of them. All right, may I have a motion to adjourn, please? We stand adjourned.